you get to go places and do things and see things that 99% of people are not going to get to do. You know, they're not going to get to that point because they're not willing to put in that little bit of work. So that positive feedback where you push yourself and you go faster and maybe you win the race, or you get second place instead of third place. It's kind of a good feeling, you know. You kind of learn from an early age that like pushing yourself or working a little bit harder usually pays off.
Truly was a pleasure to have this man on the podcast. He is 29 years old. He is a ski racer, but not alpine. He creates his own speed, and I'm going to read a little bit of his bio that looks like it's pretty far out of date, maybe 5 years out of date, but to a point. So it says, my name is Reese Hanneman. I'm a 24-year-old ski racer. I was born and raised in Fairbanks, Alaska, and have lived in the 49th state my entire life. I'm currently living in Anchorage, where I train, travel, and race with the APU Nordic Ski Center as a member of their elite team. Talks about his parents, the love of racing, and it ends with, I am training and racing hard in hopes of representing Alaska and the United States at future Olympics and World Championship events. It shows the hard work and dedication that he has put in actually pays off. He was able to compete in the Olympics in Pyeongchang, and I will let the interview do the rest of the talking, but it was definitely awesome to get a different perspective on the sport of skiing. Each one of us has a different perspective of how we see it, but when you're riding chairlifts all the time, you have a similar perspective of those people that ride chairlifts. And Nordic racing is something that I would say less people have the chance to gain perspective of. And it was truly a pleasure to sit down with Reese and talk about fitness and nutrition and his love for backcountry skiing as well. And I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation with Reese Hanneman. You know, something in the big mountain competitions, like someone falls and there's a course hold, and the person that's in the gate to go next, it's a perfect ecosystem to test how anti-fragile they are and to test their mindset. And it's hard. It's hard when you're pushing your limits, especially in a sport like big mountain skiing, where, if something goes wrong, it can mean serious injury or death. And so, someone gets hurt and it takes, 15 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes to get the comp back going. How do you deal with that? And do you, can you keep yourself in a mind state where you're able to overcome, those things? And it definitely, I think that's one of the things that really determines how successful you are as an athlete, is your ability to be anti-fragile. Because like we talked about earlier, there's so many different variables that can go into it. The bus gets a flat tire on the way to an event, or,
right.
Whatever it is, like you said, your skis don't show up and you have to borrow someone else's. And it's like, okay, well, how confident are you in just yourself and your own ability, not everything else around you?
The mental aspect of it, in big mountain or mountain bike comps or any of these things where it's alpine racing, when these guys crash, and they go into the fence and they're airlifted out, and then you're the next dude in the gate, and you're there to win, and the dude just almost, died. And now, that is something to be okay, I gotta go. I'm giving 100%, full gas, no hesitation. So I think, that's a crazy level of non-fragileness, and I think it's good to, in training, I try to it's easy to always want a perfect situation. When you show up to training, I want my routine. I want my skis to be perfect. I want the weather to be perfect. I want the tracks to be perfect. I want all this stuff. And I think over time, you know, if you're talking about like 5 years, you want all that stuff as good as it can be so that you can train at the highest level and whatever. But not being afraid of stuff happening like that, you know, in training. I mean, I imagine those guys, probably the guys who are good at it in the big mountain comps, they probably practice a lot of mind stuff, you know, to get to the point where you can do that, or because otherwise, yeah, I mean, good luck. Like, oh, I'm up here on the top of this run and it's gnarly and I got to huck this huge cliff and I've never had this problem before. Here goes nothing, you know, like, probably not.
Yeah, totally. One thing, you know, I interviewed David Wise, and one thing that, you know, talk about a resilient guy, like the half pipe comp last year in the Olympics, you know, equipment malfunctions, oververt and everything, you know, like there's a lot of variables that were affecting the outcome of what he was, you know, going through. But one of the things that he did, and I got to interview him before the Olympics, so it was really cool to watch his, you know, performance at the Olympics, understanding what he had done. And he has goggles that are blacked out, and because he's competed at the venues before, he imagines being at the venue, and then he imagines bad conditions like wind, like, you know, an oververt pipe, and what it will feel like to take off and set a trick wrong and correct it midair.
Yeah.
And I think that type of visualization is like, you know, that is foresight. That's mental training at its best.
Yeah. And you can see why he's a 2-time champ. I mean, David is somebody I love. He's somebody I look up to, man. I actually talked to him. I walked back through the athlete village with him the night after his qualifying run, Pyeongchang, and he was just like telling me about it. Yeah, that he's like, you know, honestly, like I almost always qualify on my first run, like it's always sick. And you know, at the Olympics that day, I think he got 3 runs and he crashed on his first 2, you know, and it was like came down to his last run, and it's like this is it. Like the defending champ doesn't even, like, if I don't do this, like I don't even make the finals, you know. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy, man. That's like, but you can see, yeah, I mean, people who really want it, they sit down and they make blackout goggles and they sit down and they envision every course with bad conditions and all kinds of stuff happening, you know, and like, there you go. Like that's how you pull something like that off. You know?
Yeah, totally. Do you ever do any sort of like meditation? You know, meditation is like a huge thing in especially the entrepreneurial world. And eventually I want to talk about the Fire Group and PR and other stuff that you're doing as well, because I think that it very integrally ties into the ski community. But before that, like, do you practice any sort of meditation? Is it something that you have explored? Or
I have done some. I've had different coaches who were like, you know, some coaches that were like really into meditation. And yeah, I mean, I think I've played around with it. I mean, kind of under their direction. It was never really something to me that I never really latched onto it. I never felt like it was really make a tangible difference to me. That's just me personally. I know a lot of people do. Honestly, before big events and races, and I usually pray the night before or morning before, and that just kind of like, I think that puts me in a good mental place, you know, it kind of checks my heart, my motivation, like what am I here for? And is it sometimes stepping back a little bit and realizing it's not always all about yourself, I think is, for me, that helps. It helps me competitively actually, because, you know, then it takes some pressure off and you realize that the number on the result, you know, that you're more than that. And so the pressure's off a little bit. And I think for me, that puts me in a better place. So that kind of, instead of meditation, that's kind of like, I guess, my mental approach, and that can apply to any situation, whether it's competition or just, you know, stressful things or annoying roommates or whatever. But,
yeah, totally. I think that's, you know, it's for David, he talks a lot about how A, skiing is a form of worship, and then B, like the glory isn't necessarily his. And I think a certain level of humility, when you understand like being a conduit for like the capability of how beautiful, life in this world that has been created for us is, then, it allows I think too much pressure just sometimes it creates diamonds. Oftentimes it just creates, combustible, explosions. And
it's a great saying that people love to put on social media about pressure and diamonds. But like, I mean, you have to be, it's, I think it takes some couple tries before you get that right.
Yeah, totally. Yep. And there's a finesse to pressure, especially internal pressure.
Well, like people always say, pressure creates diamonds, but like they don't talk about what it takes to actually like the physical situation that has to happen. Like you can't just like create a diamond, like push on it really hard in some random direction and have nothing else to back it up and you're going to make a diamond. Like, no, you have to have, everything's got to be dialed and then you apply pressure, right? It can't go anywhere. It can't squirt out. It can't like, so, if you, if you're not set up right, then pressure does not create diamonds.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it creates bombs, explosions.
That's why diamonds are rare.
Exactly, totally. And it takes a long time under a lot of pressure to create diamonds. It's not created overnight. What about nutrition and fitness? Like obviously like everything that you're doing is in relation to fitness, but like what are some of the things that you think have benefited you on the fitness? Like I interviewed Kenny, strength coach K, for one of the first episodes this season, and he is the fitness coach for the Chinese half pipe team, and he's talking about how cross training is really good, how people are they put all their eggs in one basket too early. Like 13-year-olds only playing baseball, and they play baseball 365 days a year, and then their arms blown out, and then you're like, no wonder. Like you're going a little too hard in the paint at not the right time window. Do you still do cross training? What's your training and fitness look like right now? And then what does nutrition look like?
Yeah, I think cross training is like extremely valuable for everything, as an elite athlete, no matter what sport you're in, injury prevention is a big factor, and so injuries are one of the big hurdles, to becoming elite, to getting to your goals. So I think cross training plays into that a lot because it's balanced, right? And so if you do, I cross country ski a lot, and so we go down the track and we're either skate skiing or classic skiing, but for the most part, it's all movement straight ahead. And you use the same muscles, you use your abs and your chest and your back and your triceps and, your legs, the back of your legs. And you do that like a couple million times, but you haven't, if you don't move a different way, then you lose a lot of that flexibility and that balance and those muscles that will keep you from being injured. So, and injury is less of a factor for us. For us, it's actually more like overuse injury is actually the biggest thing. So for us, it's because we do the same motion so many times. That's really where you get your injuries. If you're a pipe skier, you got to have that cross training, because when you crash, or an alpine racer, you crash. Yeah, you don't need your pecs, when you're in the run, but when you slam into those fences and you're trying to brace yourself, if you don't have that, then you're going to blow your back out or whatever. So yeah, cross training is big. For cross training skiing, it's sweet because it's so aerobic. It's all about developing your heart and your lungs for the most part. So, and you can do that a lot of different ways, right? So you can ski, you can run. We do a lot of uphill running. We do a lot of uphill biking. So road biking, mountain biking, even swimming, swimming hard in the pool. It's great training. Soccer is pretty great training. People always like, hardcore cross country ski coaches a lot of times are like, oh, that's not training. That's like that's what you do for warm up for your weight workout, which is true if you're just kind of like dinking around on the soccer field. But if you go out there and play hard, I wore my heart rate monitor at a soccer game a couple years ago because I was like, everyone always says, like all the ski coaches always like say this isn't training. I'm going to see how hard this is, you know? So I wore my heart rate monitor. I played pretty hard, right? It's like you run for every ball. You're always getting open. You're passing and my heart rate was jacked, man. It was like, cause it's like super anaerobic, right? You sprint for 10 seconds and then you keep running, right? So it's like you're constantly going in and out of your aerobic threshold. So, I mean, that kind of stuff is really valuable. As I got older throughout my career, I realized that I could get a lot of benefit from doing other sports. I just had to do it kind of with intention. So if I go out on a mountain bike ride and you're just coasting a lot and you're not really riding hard and you're just talking and you're stopping a lot, you know, that's fun. And I think there's value in that. But if you're trying to be elite, basically it comes down to like, you don't have time to do that. If you're going to train 4 to 6 hours a day, you can't spend 2 or 3 of it doing that. You know, that's not really getting you, that's not making you faster. It's making you, it might make you have fun, but it's not making you faster. So I try to learn how to combine those two. So it's like, okay, if this workout needs to be pretty solid and I want to go mountain biking, I need to bike with these people so that I can ride hard enough, you know. And to me, that was what I needed, because it was fresh. It wasn't like skiing or running like I do all the time. So it had the fresh aspect, and it was something different, a new movement for my body, but I could also like go hard enough and do it with intention. And I think that, so for me, that was kind of a balance, like figuring out fun versus intention, I guess, with training. But yeah, and then the nutrition side of things, cross-country skiing is pretty sweet in that it's basically about how many calories you can eat. So we're basically trying to keep up with how much we're burning. I've had like physiologists from the US ski team, you know, they'll weigh you and they'll do some calculations and they'll put you on the, you know, track your heart rate and do all this stuff, and they'll estimate like how many calories you're burning, you know. And we're like on a glacier, we go on the glacier in the summer to train on snow. And so you're at kind of high altitude and you're training really hard and you're skiing a lot all day. So like we're talking like 4 to 6 hours of pretty intense cardio, what people would call cardio a day. You know, your heart rate's like 150 beats or higher, you know, 4 or 5 hours. You know, they say like some of the men are burning like 10,000 calories a day to keep up. You can imagine it sounds sweet, right? But then like after a couple of days, it's like actually exhausting because you're just eating all the time. Yep. All you do, like when I'm at home and I'm training in town, you know, I'm cooking constantly. You're just cooking and cleaning and eating and and then like by the time you've done washing dishes, you're like hungry again. So yeah, high calorie food. I mean, the healthier the better. High carbohydrate, high protein, high fat. Try to get as many vegetables as possible. But you know, I can't eat a lot of vegetables because there's no calories in that. If I eat just only vegetables, I mean, I would die because it's not enough food. So yeah, that's one upside of being a cross-country skier is you can just eat like a maniac. And every party you go to, every dinner you go to, you're always the freak that's just like stuffing in your face, and like nobody can believe how much you're eating. But yeah, so I try not to eat. I mean, I have a wicked sweet tooth, but I try not to eat like exorbitant amounts of sugar. I mean, I think we all know that simple sugars are not good for the human body. So that being said, you know, when you're out there on a long run and you've been running for 3 hours and you're pretty tired, like a bag of peach gummies, it goes a long way. So
totally. Yeah. And I think it's all about, you know, if you have a high metabolism and you know that you're going to process the glucose or the sugar into glucose right away and your muscles are going to use it, like, yeah, you're just fueling yourself. If you're like sitting there eating gummies like at a time after, and you know, if you already have the glycogen replenished in your muscles and everything, then like, you know, it may not be the best thing. But if you're out there, you know, doing it, it is what it is. Sugar can affect my emotions a lot. So I need to be careful about when I eat sugar. I'm fine if I am working out, but yeah, if it's like, you know, too long after working out, then it just really screws with my emotions. So yeah. What about like traveling? Like you said that, you know, all these different cultures, different, you know, types of like the diets of different cultures can be completely different. Like if you're in Japan, you're eating a lot of like rice and stuff like that versus like Europe, it's like meat and cheese and bread. And like, do you have any specific like things that you stay away from, or any specific ways that you really focus on trying to get the right calories and the right macros, or pretty much just like eating consistently?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty like I have a pretty big picture approach to it. So I mean, I don't try to like I'm not really measuring stuff or trying to get complex carbohydrates. I mean, for me, it's just like complex carbohydrates, solid protein, healthy fats and vegetables. So whatever that means. I mean, sometimes I just got back from China. I was racing in China for 2 weeks, which is like totally different, right? You're eating like squid ink soup for breakfast before a race. It's like, but that goes back to like being non-fragile, It's like, this is disgusting. I mean, and it's part of it. It wasn't that bad. It was partly me like wanting to try it, but it's like, okay, this could be like real. Like I've never raced on this, like I've never had like fermented fish before a race, And so it's like, okay, do I have to have that? I mean, what else can I do here? Like, okay, I can get creative. Normally I eat oatmeal, but there's no oatmeal here. So there's rice. So that's pretty similar. So I'll have some rice and I'll have some eggs and I'll put some honey on the rice. And there we go. That's like kind of like oatmeal, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a cool part about sport and elite sport, I guess you could say, is like getting to travel and getting to go places and experiencing culture. And just, I think it makes you appreciate, that opportunity. And obviously being from the US, like we have the resources, we're pretty lucky in a lot of ways. So I think that is kind of part of that big picture thing too, is just appreciating, look, like I may be obsessing about this one event, this one race, and this one. I mean, here I am, and I'm in this place, and there's 100 million people that are all like living in slums, So, how big of a deal is my race? It's not that big of a deal. Like, So culture-wise, probably my coolest trip that I ever did. I think my favorite place. I mean, as a skier, you are always chasing winter, right? So it's like Scandinavia for cross-country skiing. It's Scandinavia, so like Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, Germany, Italy, France, Alps, so Austria, Switzerland, stuff like that. And those places are all gorgeous, and they all have skiing culture. To be totally blunt, it's like usually a bunch of well-off white people, is kind of the ski culture, right? You're in ski towns and mountain towns, and that's just that's what it is, and that because there's a lot of those people around the world too. But coolest one I ever got to do, I think, was we went to Turkey for World Championships, under 23 World Championships, and this was like in 2013 maybe. And now you can't go to you're not going to go to Turkey.
No.
Situation being Americans, you're not going to go to Turkey. So we went there, and it was wild, like totally different, right? So you're in like a Middle Eastern Muslim culture. The food is completely different. There's no white people there. You're dragging your ski bag through the Istanbul airport, and everyone's wearing burqas and turbans, and the food is crazy, and the prayer things are going off, and you're like, okay, I am not in Norway anymore. So it was cool. I mean, it was really cool. You see what that part of the world is like, and really different, so.
Yeah, totally. I think that's one of the things that is like so fortunate about being a skier that has traveled for, the sport, is being able to see those other cultures and experience them. And like, there is a lot of hate in the world, but there's a lot more love than like a lot of people may think, because of the way that news and media and everything portrays it. I think it's really cool to see how welcoming so many people are from different cultures when you have especially when you have a unifying, something that unifies and brings people together like skiing. I think it's definitely one of the things that I feel very fortunate about, is like being able to see different cultures and being able to experience those things in a way that has opened my eyes to like just how small the world really is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's one of the values of sport, is that it breaks down boundaries, I think that because you realize that these are people, and they like to shred the pow just like me, like these people love corduroy just as much as I do, and is it about the corduroy? No, not at all. It's just about like, you start with that common passion, and you see that it goes well beyond that. At the Olympics last year, I met this kid. He was I believe he was the only member of the Olympic team from India. And he was a cross country skier. I started talking to him, and he spoke pretty broken English, but he spoke English, which is like, okay, you're already ahead of me. You're already like kind of fluent in another language. Yeah. And I talked to him about, where you're from. Like, are you actually from India? Yes, grew up and he lives in India. Where do you train? He said, well, he trains on hiking trails, and it's terrible because there's no grooming, and he's skiing, and it's all bumpy, and it's all from people walking and dogs and animals. And it's terrible, but that's the only thing he has, and it snows there sometimes. So he trains, and he had to start the Indian Ski Federation, he had to found it. He had to find someone that hey, would you be the president of this ski federation so that we can make a ski federation so that I can go to the Olympics in like 4 years. And so all these things he went through. Right. And it's like, just learning that from him. I mean, like, what a different experience he has had, than me or the Europeans or all these different people. And it's just like, wow, like that's sick to learn, to hear that kind of thing and just kind of bond over, like, but he loves skiing just like you and I do, and he's from India, and he probably lives in a small town of 5 million people or whatever, and like he's the skier, so.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how sports break down those barriers and just, bring people together around a unified goal. And I think, that's like one of the most amazing things about human existence is when you find like-minded individuals coming together for, that unified goal. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the PR, the Ophira. How do you pronounce that? Ophira?
Ophira, yeah.
Ophira Group. What's that all about? Like, where did that come from? What's your, telling other people's stories authentically seems to be a huge reason behind doing all of it. And so, like, where does that come from? Why do you do that? And
yeah. So I founded, it's kind of like a marketing agency, basically. Founded Ophira Group 3 years ago now. I've been doing kind of like a lot of freelance stuff. So I kind of got into photography. My brother was in photography, so I kind of like started getting into it. And then I had a bunch of friends who are professional photographers. And then obviously being an athlete, you get photographed a decent amount, And so I grew up, reading Free Skier and Freeze and mountain bike magazines and skate magazines, surf magazines, and all this stuff. And those magazines are always so photo oriented. And beautiful photos. Ads always have sick photos. And so as a cross country skier who had kind of grown up like reading that stuff, I always thought, like, why is cross country skiing why doesn't it have that same look to it? Like, I mean, it's a pretty sick sport, honestly. Like people are going really fast. You can go 40 miles an hour on 44 millimeter skis with no edges, you got no protection. And obviously the uphill aspect is extremely grueling. And I had seen so many places where like, oh, that would be a sick photo. Like, look at that sun, and it's in the corduroy and like ripping around this corner. I mean, why is that not a photo? So I kind of like when I started taking pictures, I kind of like always had these visions of creating images like that. And so I started kind of doing that stuff a little bit freelance, and then just got a lot of demand for different things: photo, video, social media management, website, stuff like that. So I kind of like, dude, let's do this. So I started that while I was ski racing as a way, and it was awesome because I was working, in between training while I was traveling, while I was competing, stuff like that. So it allowed me to working while I was being an athlete as well. So, which is it's kind of hard to find a balance like that, but.
Yeah, totally. I think that it's one of the things that is really cool about the internet right now, the age of the internet, is it allows for a lot more remote style work. And, like Instagram and websites are kind of the new Freeze magazine, where you have the pictures and the stories, and it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about telling other people's stories in a way that allows the reader to relate to the experience and experience something new from the perspective of the storyteller. I think at the end of the day, by telling each other's stories, kind of like the guy from India, it's like those types of things, it just allows you a different perspective and a way to see the world in a different way. And like you're saying, like, there's hundreds of thousands of people that are impoverished and aren't living the same quality of life that, we've gotten to experience, and understanding like their reality is just as real as mine or yours or the other person. I think, one of the best things about the human experience is being able to relate to others in a powerful way. Yeah, I was looking at some of the photos that you've taken. Like, I love some of the air that you've caught on on your skis, and like throwing 360s and stuff like that, where, you made like a creative, fun aspect to a sport that, is pretty much just dictated by the clock.
Yeah, I try to bring that a little bit of flavor in there. I was always like building jumps and stuff at cross country ski practice, which is like, people are like, wait, what? But ultimately, it's like really good training, because you build a jump, you got to get some speed. Like, you got to ski up that hill, so you end up just skiing up that hill 30 times. It's like, dude, you just did an interval set and you didn't even know it,
Mm-hmm.
I got in a race, so like some Red Bull has this event called Nordics. I mean, it's basically like ski cross. It's like cross country ski cross. So it's a legit ski cross course. Big, I mean, pretty sizable tabletops and big bank corners and like carved out drops and stuff like that. And then with a big uphill in the middle. So, and that was like one of the coolest things. I love that, because you're going pretty big. It's like full contact. You're right there. It's just like real ski cross, except there's like a 50, 60 meter climb in the middle of it, right? So yeah, I'd be at like World Cups and like day before the race, like scoping out these rollers, that you can huck off of. Like, so everyone's there like really serious, testing all their skis, like all these athletes on the course, and I'd be like sprinting into this roller so I can like, it and like throw a big shifty over it or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff, like, to me, is keeps it fun, man. That's like what it's about for me, is just enjoying being out there. That's kind of where it all started. So I think trying to remember where, the love, and it goes into like Ophira and the marketing and the content that we create at Ophira is trying to embody passion and the reason we do stuff, and creating ads and creating content for online and stories, writing copy, writing articles, writing press releases that's not canned, it doesn't seem like super cheesy and lame, that it's something that people like you and I, people who do these sports, relate to, and because we all know that you see those ads and you're like, that person doesn't really know what they're doing, like that doesn't look legit. So yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely a super interesting section of the market when you look at skiing, and especially alpine skiing, because there's like this section of skiers who are hardcore skiers who are out there crushing it and like have the technique on lock and everything, but some of the things that they're doing is so unattainable that it becomes not marketable anymore. Right. And so then like you find this healthy balance of like, and it's not necessarily a super healthy balance, but it like the one turn wonders, where like it's just like the one turn with the pow shot and everything, and like that's cool. It gets people inspired to go out and ski, but is that really the heart and nature of skiing? Like, even, you know, I was at Vail on Saturday and there was so much snow, but I got one run that was actually untracked powder. The rest of it, or two runs actually. One of them was like half in moguls though. So it was like questionable on like what it was, you know, like it wasn't really truly untracked. One of them was actually fresh tracks in a bowl, but the rest of the day I was skiing through chewed up snow. And it's not, you know, it's not that like, yeah, that one run was incredible. And I, you know, like definitely like savoring that fresh tracks moment, but that wasn't what necessarily defined the day. And so it's like, I think we're just at an interesting spot in marketing in general, because marketing is just smoke and mirrors most of the time. You know, it's creating these emotion invoking images, videos, whatever that drive the sale. But then like, you know, how do you orchestrate the marketing aspect with the follow-up and the, you know, actually providing the experience that is sold? And yeah, I think they're just at an interesting spot.
Yeah, no, I think I totally agree. I mean, like I would say you probably had that experience where like some of the sickest ski days, you know, on the mountain are less about the perfect snow or the perfect grooming and more about, you know, like the super blown out cruddy days, but you got a bunch of friends and there's no one else on the mountain and you know all the hits, like just teaming up and just hucking everything. And maybe you're not even going big, but you're just like, everything's fun. And you know, it's not perfect weather, but it's like nice enough. Like that's what most people experience, you know? And so at Ophira, we're trying to tell the stories of people doing things kind of like realistically in a way that's still inspiring. You know, like you see, I mean, people, you know, in the backcountry, and maybe it's not just this like epically huge face that's untouched and you're like the spine is just perfect, you know, but you know, you're there with you got your someone's skinning and their dog is like running at them. And it's not really the most epic ski shot ever, but you see like there's a friend in the background and there's a dog who's just stoked looking at you like, ah! And they're skinning and you're like, oh, that's what I want, you know? Like, of course we all want to shred this perfect spine, but like there's probably 10 people in the world that do that per year, you know? So, but then of course you want to tell that story. I always shoot to make that look like, to grab your eye. So you see that picture and you're like, oh, that's sick. Like I would love a poster of that.
Totally.
A poster quality, but in a realistic yet inspirational moment, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, we've started out doing a lot of that with cross country. Obviously I shoot and we do different content stuff for all the ski companies, for the most part, most of the ski companies. And then we're doing a lot of stuff with more outdoorsy companies, outerwear, Solomon, Lululemon, eyewear companies, Hestra, different gloves, stuff like that. So, you know, Alaska's a great place to shoot a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of cool adventure, a lot of good athletes, a lot of amazing terrain that you can shoot up there. So That's kind of where we're going. Yeah.
Totally. No, that's awesome. I love it. I would love to chat more about that because I also run a media company, less focused on the ski industry, more focused on the online entrepreneur influencer industry. Yeah, would love to chat more about that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Totally. Couple rapid fire questions, and then I actually have to hop off here soon because I'm hopping on another one in like half an hour.
Okay.
Number one, what does success mean to you?
I think the easiest way to encapsulate that for me, success is fully capturing your potential. So if your potential is to be a gold medalist, you know, if you have that capability, then doing that not everyone is capable of winning an Olympic medal, you know, and doing as best as you can. And then when I say, you know, that's very cliche, doing the best you can, but I mean like really doing the best you can and kicking butt at it. Whether that means, you know, if that means like getting top 5 in your master's race, but like you were 20th, you know, and you're like, man, I'm going to set this goal and I'm going to do it. And boom, there's 5th. Like, and how good do you feel after that? That to me is success.
Yeah. Love it, for sure. What's one piece of advice you'd pass along to someone who wants to do what you do?
I would say don't be afraid of working hard. I think I can't stress enough that more and more, I think even people my age, people younger than us, it's like, it's so easy to think it all comes easy. It comes fast. If you're talented, boom, it'll just show up. And that's just not true. I mean, hard work will get you a long ways. And that applies to everything, I think, in life, sports, work, relationships. I mean, you want to have a good relationship that lasts a long time, like you have to work on it, like you have to work at it. It's not a fairy tale. Sports are not a fairy tale either. So, and just enjoying working hard. It's not bad. I don't know why people think working, like, oh, it's so hard, or like, if it's not bad. That's how you get things that are rare, because most people won't do it.
Love it. That's, excellent advice, especially in regards to relationships. Like, nothing is a fairy tale, and you're always going to have conflict in relationships, whether it's friendship, family, intimate, whatever type of relationship. There's always going to be conflict, and it's how much hard work are you willing to put in to see the other's point of view, express yourself, and find a middle ground with negotiations where everyone wins. I think it's super important, because at the end of the day, if you have, you could have a bunch of gold medals, but if you don't have anyone to share it with, then what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think love that you brought that up. What's one piece of encouragement or wisdom that you received that stuck with you?
Anytime that somebody, that I looked up to, somebody that was ahead of me, you could say, like in my track, or whatever that meant, so for me, that was like an older athlete, or an athlete who was, had already achieved some of the things that I wanted to achieve when I was younger. The value that those people have in young people's lives, I think is huge. So if you are that person, I would say, I would transition a little and say, if you are that person in any aspect of your life, don't underestimate the positive impact you can have on people who are younger, that look up to you. And I don't think that as we go on in time, people are less and less inclined to like look to older people, or experienced people, like to straight up ask them for advice, and we don't sit down and talk to our grandparents anymore, or old coaches, or old business people, and those are the people, they've seen it all and they've done it all. So if you are that person, and I don't count myself that wise yet, but if you are in any way that person, I would say don't underestimate what you can do for young people by just giving them advice, giving them a word of encouragement. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I love that, for sure. This one sometimes stumps people or not. It's a big question. If you could have one significant impact in the world, what would it be?
People just to realize that life is a lot more than just like yourself. I mean, there's so many people, and we all get so wrapped up in our individual world, and we get so obsessed by worldly things, that really aren't going to last any longer than your lifetime. So I think to have a good perspective, to think long term, to think, think what's going to make a difference in other people's lives and last longer than you. Not be so self-centered. I mean, I'm a victim of this all the time. I just worry about myself, and I think that I am the center of the universe, and that is just totally not true. So that's kind of a very roundabout way to answer that question, but
love it. No, definitely love it. Do you have a favorite travel tip or hack for ensuring that you're, comfortable or anti-fragile showing up to events? Or
I am an earplug dude. Earplugs on me in all my luggage at all times, carry on. So earplugs, dude. If I could be like sponsored and be like an advocate for like an earplug company, if anybody is looking for like an earplug influencer, hit me up, because I'm all about it. And I learned pretty early on that, like, dude, it is not worth it to be woken up by some Yahoo in your hotel room at 4:30 a.m. on the morning of a race. So like, why would you let other people dictate your sleep? So earplugs plus the noise canceling headphones. game over, dude. You can sleep anywhere.
Love it. Yeah, that's awesome. And then what are your plans moving forward with everything, Ophir Group, competing, everything? And then like, where's the best place for people to find you, get in contact with you?
I'm competing kind of on a more flexible schedule than I have in the last couple of years. I'm actually finishing my engineering degree right now. I'm working a lot with my marketing agency, Ophir Group, and we're growing. We've got a lot of new clients. It's pretty exciting. So I'm looking forward to growing that. And of course, like any good younger person, you can find me on Instagram at Reese Hanneman. And then Ophir Group is just at Ophir Group. And yeah, drop me a line, and I'd love to chat or talk, or if you have any questions, or happy to give advice, or if you want to go out for a rip, let me know.
Perfect, brother.
Hey, just one more thing before you go. I wanted to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you really enjoyed it. A couple things that I would ask that you do if you enjoyed today's episode. Number one, go follow us on Instagram at The Athletic Stance Podcast. Number two, if you don't mind leaving a review, rating it, and subscribing, it always helps. It helps spread the word. It helps me know what you guys are enjoying or not. And if you don't mind leaving a comment on Instagram, letting me know what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, I will always take into consideration. And feel free to send me a message with recommendations on who you'd like to hear from, what you'd like to hear us talk about. And as always, thank you so much for listening, for your time, and we'll see you next time at the Athletic Stance Podcast.